Welcome to the Nexus Unloaded podcast. This is Will Crozier.
And I'm Mikki Westcombe. We are the founders of Nexus Performance. Joining us on this wild ride is our heavyweight coaching team, ready to unleash their expertise to solve any problems in your journey to getting strong and jacked.
Through our real-world experience, we hope to break things down in a digestible, applicable, and entertaining way.
So pump up the volume and let's get into this. Hello.
We're back.
We are back again. There's more podcast episodes between you and I.
Yep, but this is the first one for 2024 with us.
It is.
Exciting.
Yeah, fun times, party times. Everyone loves listening to our podcast episodes anyways. We get the best viewership.
I don't know why.
Because we're fucking awesome.
I know, but I don't listen to, I hate the sound of my voice. So when they come out, I'm like, oh, it's me.
When you're actually recording yourself and you have to watch back. I can't watch back my looms. So, I don't know if you watched back any of my looms when I was doing...
I watch yours, and I'm like, these are so fucking good. They're so much better than mine. And then I'm like, mine suck.
I can't watch mine back. But, when I watch your loom videos of, the education pieces, I'm like, fuck, this is good.
It's
just one of those things.
Drool comes out of my mouth.
I watched that one. It's it's fine. Projectile spit.
Yeah, so bad.
I catch myself every now and then when I'm talking, you get that spit build up in the corner of your mouth. And you're talking
yeah,
okay, swallow and then continue the conversation because someone's eyes, you see them drifting down to your mouth
and then you get self-conscious.
Do I have drool around the corners of my mouth again? Or when you have a big pimple and you just feel like everyone's looking at your pimple.
Yeah, and then I can't help but if I know something's there, I keep touching it and then I'm like, don't draw attention to it.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
fucked it.
You keep picking at a pimple, it's just going to get worse. Or I actually had, this is just going back way in the day, in high school, I had a big crush on a guy that was in a grade above me.
Yep.
And I went to the Cairns show and credit to him, it was a nice thing to do, but I had a little bit of a booger hanging out of my nose that I didn't notice. And the guy that I had a little bit of a crush on, he was just the hot popular dude in the grade above me at school.
Oh no!
He's like, oh, Mikki, you got a little bit of a thing.
Oh, that's so nice.
So he told me, so I wasn't walking around with booger hanging out of my nose. And none of my friends told me. I'm like, you bitches are shit.
You know what? He's the real fucking
Yeah, but still, that's so embarrassing. I was talking to this dude that I had a crush on with snot hanging out of my mouth. So I always tell people, if I'm driving to the gym and I look over and I see Will has a little loogie.
Yeah.
I'll be like, oi, bro, you got a bit of a booger hanging out. Or when he has a lot of sleep build up in his eyes.
Yes, the crusty sleep.
Yeah, he always gets a lot of sleep in his eyes because Will's a heavy sleeper.
Yep.
So, yeah, fun times. But
now I'm just thinking about the booger boy. What a sweetie.
Have you ever had that?
Mine is chia seeds in my teeth.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I remember Dave when he used to work out of here, every time he would be like, oh, you've got, because he would know, because I'd see him in the morning and I'd be really self-conscious and I'd be like, look, Dave, is there chia seeds in my teeth?
Yeah.
And he'd be like, no. And then after a few times he'd be like, oh, you've got, and I'll be like, and he's like, oh, I'm fucking with you. And I'm like, no.
There's enough mirrors in here that you could look yourself.
Yeah, but when you just you look and then you're like, did I actually look properly? And is it right there? And so mine's chia seeds.
Or you look after talking to someone, you're like, fuck, I have this big black thing in my tooth.
Yeah, literally, it's always in the middle. And I'm just
or at the bottom, I get them in the bottom of my teeth.
Oh, that's
really bad. Anyways, let's get into some stuff that's going on today. We've had a bit of a dumb intro talking about loogies and stuck in your teeth, but one of the notes that we have here is my reading adventures. Yes. I've started reading books that aren't self-help coaching education books. I've brought one back for you today, What Lies Between Us by John Mars. Got stuck into that one. I think it took me, I want to say, of actual reading days, probably only 3 or 4 days to read it. I did it over the space of 10 days because I didn't have time to sit down and
commit to hours of reading.
Yeah.
And is it to switch off and kind of relax a little bit, or what's the difference? What got you into?
I don't know. I just I did a little bit of reading when I was in the last few days of my honeymoon, just sitting by a pool and just reading. I actually haven't finished it yet because I lost it over there. I don't know where my book went. I swear someone stole it. But it was How to Make Friends and Influence People.
Oh, yeah.
In the digital age. So it was a modern one, not the original. And now that I've lost it, I was a little bit bummed. But shout out Dave Bissett, sent me the original copy. So I'm going to go back and just completely restart it and reread that because I love that book. I resonate with it a lot. And so having a few days just like chilling out by the pool, reading the book, I was like, fuck, I really want to do more of this. Like just to relax, read. But Dave was just like, you're not allowed to read those books all the time. Like, I'm like, I've got like Atomic Habits and like.
Because you apply them to work and then you're in work mode. And it kind of defeats the purpose of switching off. Whereas if you're reading something fiction or like completely non-work related, it's like zombie mode is on.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what he said. He's like, you need to read something that's not related to work if you're actually utilizing it as time. I'm like, don't you fucking tell me. But he mentioned a couple of books and I was like, well, I know you guys had a little book club thing.
Interstate book club.
And so I was like, I'll just borrow a couple of books of you and just see whether or not I can get into the habit of reading again rather than just like going out and buying books,
like ad hoc buying them, reading a bit, losing them.
But the other thing that annoys me is when I go book shopping is I can't tell a good book. You know what I mean? So I rely really heavily on other people's like recommendations.
Yeah. This is where I have a strategy that I go to.
Go for it.
Because I can't make choices. All the covers look nice. I want to look at all the blurbs and then I get overwhelmed and then I don't read a book because I'm like, there's just too many. I don't know. So usually there's like a mystery book section. So back when I lived in Seddon, there was an old secondhand bookstore and they wrapped the book in like newspaper and they would outline a few points like on the front, like what it was about.
Cool.
And they were there, it was like 50 cents because it was secondhand.
Okay.
They have them at Pack Fair. They might have them in other bookstores, but they're a bit more expensive. But they just dot point, like they do like mystery, crime, murder, whatever.
Yeah.
And then just have some like basic dot points. And then that's what I do. So I buy those.
Okay, cool. So it's not just like some, because we, at the bottom of our street, there's like one of those little free libraries where people put their books in there.
Yep.
And so I said to Dave, I was like, if I can get into the habit of reading, I will go and just check out the free books. But the annoying thing is I don't want to buy a book grab one of those books and then like be, 20, 30 pages in and just not like it.
Yeah, that's the risk.
Whereas the other book that you gave me, what was it? The marriage one?
The Marriage Act.
Yes. The first 2 chapters or 3 chapters of that, if it hadn't been recommended by you guys, I wouldn't have finished reading it because I was reading and I was like, what the fuck is going on right now? This makes no fucking sense. I'm so lost.
Yeah.
But I stuck with it and I really enjoyed it because I read that within a week or 10 days as well. And then I started on this one. So, like if it hadn't been recommended, I probably would have been like, nah, hasn't got me in the first couple of chapters. I'm giving up on it. You know what I mean? So, and a lot of the books that I generally read are like, I've read Hunger Games and, that sort of stuff. So I'm quite like the dystopian sort of thing I really like. Whereas this is the first like mystery murder sort of, like that one. I wouldn't call it murder, but it's definitely a little bit more of like a mystery sort of book that was pretty cool. So
mystery, murder, crime, those are my favorites.
Yeah. So I'll see how I go. I've got The Pilgrim.
I Am Pilgrim,
sorry. That I haven't started yet, but I'm going to start reading that. And it's a thick boy.
It is a thick boy book. So
I will take my time with that. And then the other thing we've got is our conditioning class update as well, which you haven't joined in on. You said you were going to.
I know, because last Saturday, Jared and I were going to go, but then he wanted to do something else, and then like we didn't end up going. This coming Saturday, I need to go get my bloods done.
I'm getting my hair done as well, so I can't. I'm getting my extensions moved up. So, and then I'm getting them done one more time, and then I'm taking them out. Yeah, kind of over it.
It'd be hard in this humidity to have them. It'd be quite.
It's more,
hot.
yeah, it's just a lot of hair, and it's
Yeah.
expensive getting them moved up and stuff like that. And I only had them
Imagine.
done originally for the wedding,
Yeah.
and so now that my hair's getting to a little bit more of a reasonable
Yeah.
length, it's almost as long as yours, my
I'm
natural
looking-
hair.
Yeah, it's quite long.
So it's coming through, but yeah. So conditioning classes, they've been really fun. That's how I've been doing, like that's kind of my third day of training.
Oh, good.
Like I've been getting in 3, sometimes 4 sessions a week.
Yeah.
Just easing, in all honesty, just easing my way back into having
Consistent.
fun with training and being consistent. I've actually set like training days as well now.
Good.
So
You have to do that.
yeah, the biggest issue before was that, like, you know, in the afternoon we'd kind of be like, oh, are you going to train today? Whereas now we just like, no, we're not
This-
training on Monday afternoons. Like
Yep.
Monday afternoons we don't train. So it's nice to actually be able to like switch off from work after
Yep.
you've done what you need to do for the day, rather than kind of sitting there being like, oh, we going?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yep.
And then you're like still on the edge of your seat sort of thing.
Yep.
So it's something that we've been needing to do for a really long time, and we've kind of like tried to do it but haven't really rolled it out. So
Yep.
yeah, having the set training days and knowing that the conditioning class is my like final session for the week.
Yep.
I've really enjoyed that. But yeah, this Saturday I miss out myself as well.
The following will be there.
Well, the following I won't be there because I'm
you're
in Townsville.
Well, I'll
so
be there. Not this one, but the following.
that's what's that, the 23rd or something like that, I believe it is.
Something like that.
22nd, 23rd. So, yeah, they are free for all the gym members and that to jump in and just basically throw shade at each other. It's really fun. I just call everyone pussies the entire time. I was calling you a pussy last week. I was like, Jordan's not here, the pussy. I'm going to message her and just be like, you are a pussy.
I went for a fucking 10K walk.
And that's what Josh was saying. He's like,
Yeah.
Jordan needs to stop doing movement. She's doing
Oh,
like
God.
30,000 step days.
Yeah, that happened on Saturday. And I was like, oops.
Oops.
Oopsie.
But maybe if we did the conditioning class, you'd probably be less inclined to
think
go out and move
go
and
for a
stuff
walk. Yeah,
afterwards,
that's
because
true.
you just like do that, go to your grocery shopping,
Done.
veg out for the rest of the day. But that's kind of what I do. But yeah, so they've been really fun. Then we got Christmas and New Year's Eve, because obviously you had some time off over annual
Yes.
leave over that Christmas break. Give us an
Mhm.
update. How did you find that time down? That
Melbourne.
downtime.
Yeah, it was good. But like, it was very. I always feel like it's like really rushed because you want to see everyone and then you need to stay at everyone's houses and then you feel so like displaced. Like, are you shaking your smoothie up? But it was really nice seeing like friends and family again and like actually having time off work. Like, it takes me a few days to actually switch off because like in those
100%.
first few days I was still like, oh, like I just, kind of like responding to some
I'll help
people's
this
messages.
person. I'm like, no, Jordan.
Yeah, like responding to stuff and like kind of being on. And
Which
then-
staff was messaging you?
No, not staff. Like just like people on like messaging
okay.
and just
I was
and like
just like, I didn't fucking
no.
message you.
Everyone was like
Message
so
you.
good. Don't worry. It was just me. It's my fault. I am the problem. And then after those first few days, I was like, fuck yeah, like I'm off. And it was really really nice. And then
Yeah.
it kind of allows me to be like, okay, now I'm back on again and
Yeah.
like excited.
Yeah.
So
I
it
know
was
it's
good.
like we mentioned this, like the first couple of days, you kind of like got to ease back into it as well. Like a lot of
my
people
God.
that are coming back to work this week, being the second week of January,
Yeah.
because a lot of people kind of extended that annual leave
Yeah.
out over the first week, and they're kind of like finding their paces, getting back
It's
into it. It
so
takes 2 or 3
hard.
days to kind of like repick your rhythm.
Yeah.
That's why like when a lot of people take time off, I always try and encourage them to keep a couple of usual routines in place. Like if you're used to waking up around the same time and maybe not 4:30 in the morning or something like that, but like try and wake up and like go for a walk and keep a couple of your normal things so
Yeah.
that when you go back to like work life, it's
Not a kick up the ass.
yeah, exactly. And you don't have to do that the entire time you're on break, but like if you know that there's a couple of days that you're coming up to it, then like
Yeah.
ease your way back into those sorts of routines.
And something that I encourage my clients to do as well and that I find really valuable is having one day, like when you get back to then like do the washing, do the shopping, prep some food. Because if I had have just come back and gotten
Yeah,
straight
fuck
into
that.
work, like that whole week would have just been chaos.
Try and play catch up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally get that. Like, obviously, we didn't have downtime off over Christmas filling in for staff and that, but we did in the sense that we just paced our way through the workload that we had. We weren't really super pushy with anything specifically, because obviously we didn't have the staff there to actually action what we needed. So a lot of what I was doing was like vision planning stuff, and then obviously just handling your clients and things like that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's good. I love it. I love like coming in and just being like drop it and like drop the bomb and then disappear and be like, Jordan, handle that. Take that, Jordan. But it's always nice to have another perspective. Like obviously Josh filled in on some sessions here whilst Alex was away, and everyone's always like, oh, it's nice to just get another person's perspective on something. And there was some clients that were very new, had only just started, and then a lot of people that had been around for quite a while. And it was just like getting another person's opinion on things. And obviously I look over everything that happens before I come in. But let's get into today's topic, because it is a pretty big one. A big one in like not super in depth with anything in particular, but we're talking about creating a meal plan and setting up macro splits for new clients, right? So to kick this off, I think we should probably start on why is setting up a meal plan useful, because there's a lot of haters out there around
so many. Are you okay? Oh no. There are a lot of haters, and I think people who do have such strong views come at it with very black and white perspective, and 100%. I see everything kind of being on a spectrum and contextual. So for someone maybe who is completely new that we onboard, who has maybe very little experience with understanding what calories and macros are, a meal plan can be really useful to show them maybe a way to kind of structure their meals across a day, and build some consistency around their eating habits, making sure we're getting constant energy in across their day.
You can't just assume someone to come in straight away and then just know exactly what to eat, exactly how to hit their macros, exactly how to space their meals out, and how to allocate all that sort of stuff. The reality is you can't expect someone from day one to know that and understand how to do that themselves. And that is where a meal plan is so helpful, to give them
an
guidance.
example. And just visually for them to see, oh, okay, like,
this is what I can consume, and this is quite tasty, and this is ways that I can incorporate
vegetables and the things I like, and still, be considered healthy. I say this.
Hit health markers.
Yes, that's the term.
So, I think like it has a place. And so for the people out there that are throwing a lot of shade on meal plans, I think it comes from the place of like being dependent upon meal plans long term and not rolling out like
education or strategies around showing people how to veer away from them and start building like their own days of eating.
Exactly. So what's the next point that we actually have here? So, who might this be useful for? Well, I feel like we've kind of answered that. A newbie, to help them set up an understanding of build out a day of eating.
Correct.
And it's also really helpful for some people that have come on board that knows how to eat well and track calories and things like that, but maybe is pretty fucking lazy, right? They know how to track food, but they're coming on board with really bad eating habits to begin with. And so rather than turning to them and being like, hey, I need you to set up a whole new meal plan and macros,
change everything
that you're doing, it's like, hey, let me just take a little bit of the thought process out, because clearly you're coming in with some pretty bad habits at the moment, and it's not that we don't want to work through those habits, we absolutely do, but this is going to take some of the pressure off what you need to think about eating at the moment, whilst we work on those habits.
And I think taking the decision, like taking away or reducing decision fatigue is such a big one. Because sometimes people are go, go, go. They don't have time to think, what do I feel like having today? And maybe they're so stressed and overwhelmed that whatever they feel like isn't going to help them meet their nutrient needs. So that's where I'm having this sandwich today, or I'm having this bowl of pasta, takes that emotion and decision out of it, and they can just be on their merry way.
And then as we discussed, whilst you're working on their habits and their routines and their adherence and their understanding of taking action on all those sorts of things, because if we go back to Eric Helms's nutrition pyramids, the biggest thing at the bottom is adherence and behavior, right? So before you get into calories and all the rest of it, you need to address adherence and behavior.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, if someone's come on board with really poor eating habits, like if that's going to take some of that pressure away whilst you work on the behavioral stuff.
Yep.
And it's not long term, it could be a month.
Yep.
To take some of those actions, and then whilst you're nurturing and encouraging them to make better decisions themselves, giving them freedom days to be able to eat off plan and have some of those other things.
Or
like
encourage them to make swaps. And
Yeah.
those are big things that we do too. So
Yep.
if we build out a plan for someone, we'll say, all right, this is why we've done everything, how it will flow.
Yep.
And then we would say, you know, if you want to swap something like this is, you know, these are some alternatives.
Yep, 100%. We've got heaps of different like recipe ebooks and things like that have like calorie allocations where you can be like, well, I know my dinner is a 700 calorie allotment. Let me have a look at something else that fits within that range, and I'm just going to do that. And
that's
like a
okay.
stepping stone to having more independence and being more intuitive with your eating and stuff like that long term as well.
And something that, to touch on, you were saying like the behaviors and the routines and setting those habits up. If someone's following like a plan loosely or to a T, depending on how they feel, they might then be like, you know what, I'm feeling really good, like following this structure, and I feel really good when I eat these foods. And then they're more inclined to continue with that.
Yes,
so
100%.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that we've got noted down here as well as our second point, which is it creates structure to help setting routines, promotes consistency in, you know, those quality of food types, but also energy consumption across the day. Like I literally said to you before I started here, like I've been eating one meal a day at the moment. I have zero appetite, and that one meal is taking me like an hour to two to finish. I have to go back and keep reheating it up. So like today I've opted for like a liquid calorie sort of breakfast because I just don't have any appetite first thing in the morning. And so rather than, and I could definitely be building out a meal plan to help me have more consistency in my food choices. And that's something that I was thinking about yesterday afternoon whilst I was struggling to eat this meal. I was like, I'm just going to put something together that is super low volume, but hitting at least like 2,200 calories a day, because like I said, I'm probably eating like not even 900 at the moment. It's so low. And that's going to help me with my energy consumption, with my routine and my consistency of uptake.
Because I guess too, like the importance of having that constant energy across the day, because some people might be in like low energy availability when they're training, purely because they're not really fueling or eating around, you know what I mean? Having that constant supply come in. And that's where having a meal plan can also help with someone's like pre-training nutrition, post-training nutrition. And you might find when you build that plan out and you know, takes the decision away, your training and everything might just feel a little bit better.
A little bit easier, more enjoyable, and I'll have more energy across the day generally. Because like I said, and I actually don't feel a lack of energy. That's the thing. Like I don't feel tired or groggy or fatigued. Exactly.
It'll hit.
Exactly. So that's why I'm trying to like get on top of this stuff now. One of the other points we have here is around like protein intake and quality, and then micronutrients of density and diversity. So, you know, if you're someone that doesn't have a lot of nutrition literacy, understanding different types of protein as well, understanding different types of, I mean, the next point we've got here is just like, like carbs and macros, like carbs and fats. There is different types and qualities of each of those. There's different types of micronutrients and stuff like that we want to be trying to get in. And while someone is learning all of those different things, this is a nice way to get in a variety of each.
And some people might not know. I guess if some people always ask me like, how much protein should I be eating? And obviously we'll talk about that you know, in a bit, but people might not, you can spit out a number, but people don't know what that looks like or feels like. And so having it built out in that way, someone can be like, oh, like this is really filling, or this is what 100 grams of raw chicken looks like. And they can
palm size of protein, that sort of stuff.
And from there they can also start to like learn what that looks like and learn
visualize
portions and all of that. So then later on, they can hit their protein without even having to think about it.
100%. Other things that we've got here is like structuring meal plans, supplements and stuff like that around training to promote recovery and performance, which we've kind of touched on there, like how to what you're eating before your training as well. So you're coming in not feeling like sluggish and bloated and stuff like that.
So like when you have a client come on board and you build one out for them, like you would obviously like, I mean, you do. I'm just asking for the sake of the question. Like, would you ask them, I guess, their preference in terms of, how many meals do you usually eat in a day? Or would you ask them when you train? And then when you build out their meal plan and talk over it, would you kind of then use that to kind of
outline when we want to be eating? So a lot of the times, like, this is a perfect example because I had a client inquiry call literally yesterday, and this particular client is at the moment quite dependent on meal plans, and I actually expressed ways that we could learn intuitive eating and learn macro tracking and understand that it's an evolution of that. And I was like, in 12 months time, you don't want to be reliant upon meal plans, right? Like, you want to know how to be able to eat better yourself without having someone like dictate what to be consuming. But to kick things off, I want to know where she's coming from. And so because she's coming from previous coaching, I'm asked for a copy of what her current meal plan looks like, so I can build something out that's quite similar to that. Now I know where she's coming from, and I know they offer pretty good nutrition insight already. Like, it would be decent food choices and stuff like that, but I haven't seen a full scale of exactly what that looks like in terms of the breakdown of everything and how they've expressed her to eat certain things and stuff like that. But that would absolutely be something that I would outline. Is like, I want to have a look at where you're coming from, and I want to make small changes to it to accommodate the goals that we now have, rather than doing like a complete 180 flip on it. And then also outline where we should be consuming certain things so that she's not coming into her sessions
just
after
eating
having
a giant bowl of pasta or something.
With a lot of veggies and really full and like overly satiated and bloated, and that's impacting how she feels. Obviously, depending on the type of training that you're doing as well. Like, I find with powerlifting, you can kind of get away with feeling a little bit fuller before your sessions, whereas if you're doing a conditioning class, no chance you want to be coming into that like fully distended stomach or something like that.
And again, it depends on their training goals too. Like, for instance, someone might do 30 minutes, 40 minutes, low intensity on the spin bike. That's okay to do that fasted if they want to kind of, you know what I mean? If their goal is not performance.
What they're training.
But I do a similar thing. Like, I'll ask someone, I've had someone come on board recently, Jared's sister, Bianca, and she's like, I prefer 4 to 6 smaller size meals with like frequent snacks throughout the day. So I was like, all right, what are you currently eating? What are your favorite snacks? Keep it similar. So at least there's some familiarity there. But then introduce all of those things, like making sure we're getting the micros in calcium, like protein and all that stuff. Potassium.
Sorry, every time.
Why am I like this?
Hitting your macros and getting that diversity
all of that
in. Oh fuck! I'm lost. Where are we? Yes. So we've talked about getting the decision fatigue out of it. We've talked about getting good nutrients. One of the other things which we did touch on is like, when you're coming home, and this is actually something that this client yesterday expressed to me, her reluctance to go to macro tracking and the flexibility that macro tracking will provide to them is the fact that they don't want to come home after a really busy, shitty day and have to try and make up the rest of their calories, because they're like, oh, I don't really know how to like fill 20 grams of carbs and 50 grams of protein and 5 grams of fat. She's like, I don't know how to put a meal together with those sorts of macros. And she's like, that's where meal plans are helpful, because they take that decision making out of it. But obviously, and we've got this in some of the notes here, one of the reasons why we encourage, like, even with macro trackings, presetting your day in advance so that you don't have to worry about, and macro tracking, that is essentially creating a fucking meal
and
plan.
That's what
right?
fucking fires me up. I get so angry because I'm like, people who promote or who shit on meal plans and then promote macro tracking are also promoting, like, being prepared, going shopping, having some basic ideas for your meals. And I'm like, at what point is that not creating a loose or some sort of meal plan? When we plan our groceries for the week, you know, we're not writing it down. That's the difference. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like,
Exactly.
we're all doing it.
Exactly. Like usually when you go grocery shopping, you'll have put together something to be like, what do I, you know?
These are the breakfasts I have.
Yeah,
These are what I'm going to have for lunches.
Exactly.
Dinners I'm
So,
gonna have.
you know, when people are feeling that way, like I always, and we've got it written down here again, like the set and forget mentality. So you set out what you need to eat. You can obviously have food swaps. So if you don't feel like eating the same breakfast every morning, most people do for ease and simplicity.
5 years in a row.
You can swap that out. Right.
Yeah.
So you can, you know, use something else that you know sort of fits within those sorts of calories. Like the other day, I had a random craving for spaghetti on toast.
I saw that with eggs. Eggs
Yeah.
looked really good.
They were pretty good.
I was like,
Fluffy
"Ooh."
eggs. But normally I have like a smoothie, and that's where I get majority of my fruits in. Like this has got 300 grams of fruit in it.
Yeah.
And then I'll have like an apple later in the day or something like that. So I know that I'm ticking those boxes.
Yeah.
But you know, if you don't have that sort of consistency, then you haven't set something out in place. And when you go grocery shopping, you're kind of walking around the whole thing being like,
I don't know what I'm doing.
What's on sale at the moment?
Yeah.
Or those sorts of things. So it's the same fucking thing,
It
right?
is.
Like if you're tracking your macros, you're generally setting something in place first. You go grocery shopping and then you follow through with that, and you can change what you want to eat across the week if you want to.
Yeah.
But it's not like winging it, making it up on the fly.
Yeah. And I think too, the thing with what might happen with macro tracking too is people tend to like, you know, save up calories for like desserts and dinners, or maybe they're not getting consistent energy in across the day because you know what I mean? So that having that structure, again, we're coming back to it, like helps with all of those habits and routines and behaviors.
100%.
As well.
And I think, you know, if you're putting in, you say like people are trying to bank calories for desserts and stuff like that. If you just put that in there and give yourself the permission to enjoy those fucking things that you want, then a lot of your cravings and stuff like that subside because it's something that's incorporated on a daily basis.
Exactly.
And this is an analogy that I used yesterday on this call. I was like, your body doesn't recognize the difference between a Tim Tam and a fucking apple because, sorry, I'm just like getting frustrated, but calorically, they're about the same. Right? If you have one Tim Tam and one like large apple, they're quite similar calorically.
Yep.
The difference is an apple is going to provide you with, you know, different nutrient values and certain health markers and things like that, and slightly different macro profile and whatever. But so that's going to appease like the health markers of your diet. A Tim Tam on the other side, obviously slightly different macro profile, but that's going to satisfy the pleasure sensor in your brain, which is also largely linked to your appetite and your hunger cues.
Yep.
So both of which have a place in your meal plan or have a place in your diet, and both can be used given you need like what you need. So if you've over-satisfied the pleasure sensor side and you've over-consumed on, you know, your Tim Tams and stuff like that, so long as you're trying to counter that with some of those health marker things, like you can, you know, balance it out sort of thing. So I hope that analogy makes sense. It's what I use very often. I'm like, your body doesn't recognize the difference. One is not good and one is not bad. Both are equal depending on what you need, what you desire, and you know, what
context of
your exactly
day.
Exactly. So I think that's just a really important thing for people to understand, because you know, we can go into like the all or nothing and good and bad and all those sorts of fucking things that are really trending at the moment. Like the ins and outs that's happening on like that trend on social media at the moment, I'm just like,
I've seen a few and I'm like, this is shit.
Outs is all or nothing approach. Outs is good and bad food. I'm like, babe, that's never going out, right? Like in the fitness industry as a whole, you know, like, yes, we are making headway on stuff.
I still see fucking saying, don't eat oats.
I still fucking see people, and people that are totally new to the fitness industry. Like if you go into, you know, an everyday store and you're just talking to some older woman, she has no fucking idea of, you know, good and bad and all or nothing and all that sort of stuff. So she's going to come into this with, you know, preconceived ideas. And so, you know, the sad reality is that stuff is never going to largely change. Hopefully, though, as the fitness industry grows and more people learn and understand some of these concepts and how to help people out of them, that's where it will start to
Yeah.
improve. I don't see it as ever disappearing though.
No.
Like people are always going to view food as good and bad.
Yeah.
It's
exactly.
just how we as coaches educate them through that process, I
Yeah.
think is going to make improvements.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's get into some of the other things we have here. So we've got like context of a competition prep. So
And-
why is a meal plan useful?
Yeah.
Do you want to go through some of the stuff we've got written down there?
Yeah. So I guess when there is a short-term goal in mind and we need to reach a certain outcome and someone's, acknowledge that, that this might be a time where I need to kind of knuckle down a little bit, a meal plan could be really useful. Say we need to make weight and we want to reduce as many variables as possible. So that's where maybe having a little more consistency and diligence with what we're eating is going to help, because we know that things like carbohydrate and sodium and all those things
Potassium
can have an influence on our scale weight.
Yeah.
And this is a time where we need to focus on that number, unfortunately, because that's what happens.
Weight class sport.
Exactly. So having a meal plan and having that consistency across the week helps us as a coach be able to make decisions and guide that person so that they can achieve the goal that they have set out to achieve.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it when you think about like the last month, usually it's the last week to 2 weeks that people in powerlifting really start to elevate stress around their weight class if they are sitting a little bit heavier. The stress of what to eat to be able to remove some of that burden is really, really important, because when we're looking at like having to weight cut, side note in here, we do have a weight cutting masterclass
segue on point
on the 15th of January, 5:30 p.m. Brisbane time. So register in the link below for free. But if you are having to do a weight cut, then being able to remove some of the decisions around what you need to eat is really, really helpful, because a lot of people, they'll think they're eating the right thing and then not realize that their sodium has skyrocketed, which is impacting their water retention. Especially if we're using things like water loading strategies and you've got all that sort of stuff all over the place, that's going to make an impact on, the stored amounts within the system. So I think, again, it's not something that I encourage all my clients to do, because a lot of my clients are pretty diligent with understanding those things, and it's stuff that we talk about, many weeks in advance. So they're aware of monitoring sodium potassium ratios and all that sort of stuff. But for people where it's a new comp for them or it's a new experience for them, to be able to take some of that pressure off, some of that stress off, know what they need to eat, and especially if you're doing like a low residue diet as well, that's another really helpful tool just to take the stress off so they don't have that extra burden to carry.
And I think that's really important, because a lot of the time in those last weeks, even though someone might be fine, they feel stressed, and that's when they might do something dumb like cut out food and go to liquids or fast or whatever. So having that meal plan takes that, as you said, it's really invaluable. And to give an example, because like in my last comp that I did, I think in the last few weeks leading in, I was having quite a lot of sodium in my lunch meal, and my weight had gone up about over a kilo just because of that.
Chonky.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, this ain't what I was, this is weird. And then I went through and had a look at my meal plan that I'd created, and I was like, okay, my sodium is quite high because of this like curry paste that I was having. So I was like, all right, next week I need to like look at that ratio and dial it back. And then lo and behold, the next week drop back down. So I knew, okay, this is what I need to kind of have in those last final kind of week prior, so that when I am doing my weight cut, my low res diet, like I'm not coming at it being like, holy shit, like why is my weight up here?
Exactly. And I think like a kilo for you, like that's a fair amount of your weight.
That's a lot of sodium.
That's a fair amount of your weight. So absolutely, like it takes the pressure off that final week and probably reduce the amount of like things that you need to implement for your weight cut as well, which again improves like recovery and performance and stuff like that on your comp day if you don't have to add some of those extra strategies that we have, because the less you have to do comp week to that's going to have the impact on your performance, like the better, you know what I mean? If you don't have to do low residue or sauna or water load or any of that sort of stuff, the better it is.
Just easier. You've got way more other things to think about,
100%.
especially if you're traveling.
Yeah, 100%. So let's get into some of the other stuff that we have on macro splits.
Yes.
So we've talked about like creating a meal plan and setting all that sort of stuff up. How would we set up like a macro split for someone within that meal plan, or how do we set up macro splits for people when they're first coming on board as well? Because there's, you know, a few different scenarios that we have for a lot of people. And we've already talked about the fact that we generally start things off based on where they're coming from as well, and then like transition them to like where they need to be based on their goals and stuff like that. But the first point we have here is how we divide energy intake across the day when it comes to total protein, carbs, and fat intake.
So that's basically what like a macro split is. For anyone who doesn't know, they're like, what? And I think I would just say before we go into it, like there's no perfect or one side. Like, you know what I mean? People are like, what's the best macro split for me? And I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, depends. And so something that I like to, I guess, do before I pull something together for someone is understand their goals, their background, because maybe someone who is a powerlifter, like if you're a powerlifter, you're probably going to want a little bit more protein in your diet in comparison to someone who is an endurance runner. You know what I mean? They don't necessarily have to have like 2 grams per kilo of body weight or things like that. And it's all kind of on a spectrum. And I guess if they're a vegetarian or a vegan, like, you know, protein quality, so they might need a little bit extra just to kind of make up for that. And so I like doing it in like grams per kilo of body weight. So I feel like everyone knows these general, I'll just spit them out. But I guess protein you could look at anywhere between 1.6 to like 2.5 grams per kilo body weight.
I usually just go 2 grams per kilo body weight.
It's easy.
Depending on body composition, of course.
And their goal. Like if they're in an extreme deficit and they're quite lean, then you might want to bump it up a little bit.
If someone's coming on board and they're a little bit bigger, then that's where you consider their body composition. Because if someone, you know, if you've got a female coming on board and she's, you know, 120.
Jinx. Weird.
If they're 120 kilos, you don't want to be giving them 240 grams of protein. That's going to take away largely from the amount of calories that they can be, the amount of distribution that you have on the other macros.
And it won't be enjoyable and it's not necessary.
No, exactly. So coaches out there, take that in consideration. If you are someone listening and you're wanting to apply this yourself, then obviously take that into consideration. Just look at your body fat percentage and gauge it based on there. Go on the lower side if you are a little bit on the bigger side.
Yeah, exactly. And then I guess when it comes to fat, there's a minimum amount of fat we need because, you know, it's an essential nutrient, and we need it for multiple like mechanisms and things in the body. So
hormones, health, that sort of stuff.
So I would genuinely ask the person like what their diet currently looks like to kind of get an idea, because some people have naturally like lower fat just due to preference of higher
I have a very low fat diet.
Me too, and it's something that I have to actually consciously think about to add in. Because often I might go through a day and eat under 30 grams of fat
me too.
really easily and be like, oh shit.
I don't cook with oils and stuff like that.
Because I don't like it. So depending on the person, the lower end is around like 0.6 grams per kilo body weight. Upper, they say 1.5, but
I usually just go 1 gram per kilogram body weight. Nice easy math that way. And again, personal preference. If someone, you know, we mentioned earlier when we were writing out some of these notes, that a conversation with someone that has, you know, like 35% of their total calories coming from fats, and I was like, geez, that's a lot of fat. Like, you know, having like 100, Honza, actually, I'm going to throw Honza under the bus here because like when Honza and I first started working together, shout out Honza because I know he'll be listening to this.
Friend of the podcast at Nexus.
Sorry for throwing you under the bus, Hans. Hate me later. But he was eating between like 160 and 180 grams of protein. 100 fat a day.
Wow.
Honza's check, so it's part of like his like
Yeah,
where
that's
he's
the
come
the
from,
way they cook,
his
yeah.
culture and
Yeah.
stuff like that, the types of food that they generally consume. So a little bit more creams and stuff like that in his diet, which was totally fine. I'm like, look, like that's all good, but like your digestion is probably pretty impacted from this. And so for Hans, that was a very large majority of his calories coming from fats, and so we dialed that back just a little bit. We went down to like 130.
Making some, and that's 130 is not like unreasonable for
No, Hans
yeah.
is 110
Yeah, so
kilos
that's
as
like
well, so he's not a small
no.
man.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just like we need to pull this back because there were other things digestion wise that you know, we could make improvements from, and energy availability for your training sessions, recovery
Yeah.
and stuff like that by prioritizing more carbs.
And maybe there could have been a lack of like fiber or
Yeah.
fibrous foods coming in due
There
to
was.
having
Yeah.
I was like just taking a stab here.
There was. Yeah, but he mentioned there's this like Czech sort of fruit salady thing that
Ooh.
he makes now, and he eats that before every gym session as well. And he's put
Yum.
like honey in it and things like that. So shout out Hans, he's making tremendous efforts. Oh, you got a round of applause. Standing ovation.
I can't be bothered standing up.
But yeah, so having a look over, you know, where their fats are, and then the remaining calories will go towards carbs, right?
And yeah, that's dependent on their training as well. So maybe someone who has, I guess, a higher calorie amount.
Yep.
Like they might be having like 4, 5, 6 grams of carbs per kilo body weight.
Yep.
Someone maybe who's a bit smaller and doesn't
has a taste preference towards fats.
Yeah, maybe that's 2 grams per kilo body weight and higher fat. So again, I think it's totally, I guess, up to the person, maybe how, like what they're doing, how they're training, and then how we then prioritize the distribution of those macronutrients around their activity is what's going to then help with the performance side of things.
Yeah. 100%. And like I mentioned there ever so briefly, like the percentage of fats or stuff like that someone was using. Percentages is something that like we've talked about those grams per kilogram and stuff like that, but percentages is something that MyFitnessPal and those sorts of things use when they're actually allocating people's macros. If you don't have like premium version, I don't pay for premium.
Neither do
MyFitnessPal, but like you can allocate percentages of your macros just towards certain things, and then it will spit out like your grams and stuff like that to be consumed. So percentages have a place. We don't use them. You don't use them at all.
No.
I've used them sparingly over, you know, my close to decade doing this, but it's not my go-to. I kind of, and when you actually do some of these maths, you'll realize that it kind of falls within those percentage ranges anyways. So I don't have like exact sort of percentage numbers or anything like that I'm going to refer to, but like protein, for example, would work out to be about 30%. And then fats are usually between like 15 and 25%. And then the remaining kind of goes towards your carbs. So, which works out to, I don't know, like 40 something percent or whatever.
I can't do
math. Someone worked that out, but those are kind of rough percentages that I kind of go for.
Yeah.
But again, depending on someone's taste preferences and where those grams are far more accurate, that's why we generally refer to something like that. But you know, if you are someone that likes to use percentages or MyFitnessPal, you know, as you're scrolling through allocating it, that's one thing that you can kind of consider and have a look at some of those ranges. But yeah, as I mentioned, it's not as accurate, but you know, can be helpful, and you'll find that it usually kind of fits within those ranges anyways. Then we've got like the if it fits your macros movement, macro Tetris, and the importance of micronutrients, diet quality. At the end of the day, we eat food, not calories or macros.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about this macro Tetris.
So and this is something that I fell into when I first started using MyFitnessPal. So back when I was like early or teenage years maybe, or early 20s, I was like, oh, this is fucking sick. Like you can eat whatever you want and you can still like achieve your goals. And unfortunately back then I like probably didn't have the best knowledge when it comes to like the importance of all the macros and how I didn't know how we could build a solid meal in.
Yes.
So I think I personally fell into that trap of literally looking at a day of eating as in like, oh, like what macros is in this and how can I hit my macros. And I was never like, oh, I need to hit it to the gram. Like I
Yeah.
was never like kind of that neurotic about it. But I would get to the end of the day and be like, oh, I got to have something that's, you know, hitting around this protein. And then you end up creating foods and meals that are based on like the macros you need to hit.
Yes.
And it's not necessarily a tasty or satisfying meal.
Yes.
I remember having like maybe 2 cans of tuna,
on corn thins.
like a piece
Fish
of
and
bread
rice
and like
cake.
lots. Yeah, and I'm like, this sucks.
Yeah.
You know, and it's
Yeah.
because I like was just
You're
purely
thinking about numbers, not thinking about food
looking
quality.
at numbers and macros and not looking at holistically food
Yes.
quality and like this is a meal that I'm going to eat.
Yes.
So I think that's also something like I would really encourage people to think about when you're creating again like your macro split.
Yeah.
Like what are your preferences and how
Mm.
can you easily kind of fill this in with
Yeah.
the foods and the meals that you like.
The other thing as well that I just want to quickly touch on with macro splits, I don't think we've got it noted down here. I haven't looked at the remaining things that we have.
Didn't even read my notes.
Oh my God, what a bitch. Let me have a look. It might be mentioned in here, but I'm going to go on anyways. Is like the meal timing component of those macro splits, right? So if you're someone that is pretty well established with these sorts of things and you have really good routines and good food quality and all that sort of stuff, as we work our way up the pyramid, we have meal timing. Now, meal timing is not just like what like meals you eat at, you know, like I need to make sure I have a meal 1 hour before I train or something like that, but it's also the macro split within that meal.
Yes.
Right. So as you start to become more skilled in this sort of stuff, that's where you can really start to break down what macro splits you want to be having within certain meals to maximize performance. I was going to say maximize performance and recovery and stuff like that. But the reality of the amount of people that I actually start to get to that point is really quite slim because they're already struggling with those big rocks of nutrient diversity and consistency of uptake and habits and all sleep and all that sort of stuff. So all those bigger rocks are something that a lot of people are lacking. I have, however, started to get quite a few people now that are just fucking killing it. And I'm like, all right, I actually want you now to start to look at what macros you're having across the day, how you're splitting those things up, and let's start to put, you know, fats earlier in the day, further away from your training, prioritize even distributions of protein across each meal. All things that we kind of do sparingly when we're creating a meal plan, but it's not necessarily my priority when I'm creating someone's meal plan. I'm not looking at like, I want to prioritize fats here and prioritize carbs there. Like I definitely still do that with some things. Like I'll try and put a little bit more carbs in and around their training and stuff like that, but it's not something that I really push hard for from the beginning because I'm trying to, as we mentioned, like replicate where they've come from.
Yeah.
And if that's not something that they've ever thought of or considered, I'm not going to like change everything around to suit that.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something that I think as you get a lot better, you can work through and be like, all right, meal timing in terms of how close to my training and when I'm eating certain things in the structure of that. And then the next layer to meal timing is like macro splits for certain meals in the day. So I just wanted to touch on that quickly and just note that, fats, you want even distribution of protein around each of your core meals. And then fats earlier in the day helps with brain function, cognitive function, all that sort of stuff. A little bit further away from your training so that you don't have that fullness and any sort of like, depending on what type of fat and how much you're getting in. Like you can have a little bit of fats before you train.
There's nothing wrong with like a little like 10 grams peanut butter, 15 grams peanut butter, something like that.
Exactly. But you don't want it to be like the
5 eggs.
The core of your meal.
Like, I don't know.
Try and get majority of your carbs around your performance before and after. Like dinner time is where we generally put a little bit more of our fats in as well. So it's like an even distribution a little bit throughout the day, but morning and evenings is where I usually put more of my fats. Lunch has still got a little bit in it. But it's still got the core of like my health market things that I want to put in there. So I just wanted to drop that in. And then the last thing we have, let me have a quick read here. Distribution tips. That's actually what I just spoke on.
I think we had tips as well. So like if you're someone who's listened to this and you're like, I'm going to start building my meal plan. Like maybe like the things that we want to aim for, like minimum markers in a day. Like we had that here. So like fruit, like maybe thinking about how much fruit you should be building into your plan. What do you think
There's
about
two different ways that I look at like my health marker things. So there's total grams that I want to be having in. So fruit, I usually, depending on where the person's coming from, it might even just be like 200 grams of fruit because they're so fucking
or
bad.
just 2 types.
Yes, exactly. So it'll be like 2 types of fruit, different types of fruit as well. So don't go like 2 apples or 2 bananas.
You're
like,
cheating enough.
Yeah, 2 different types
something's
of
better
fruit.
than nothing, but 2 types is a good place to start.
Yes, exactly. And that usually will get you close to 200 grams as like a minimum. But ideally, I want like more like 300 grams of fruit a day. But depending on the level of someone's nutritional, all or nothing or that sort of thing, like the more numbers you start to give someone,
it's overwhelming.
It starts to become like, oh fuck, I haven't had 300 grams, I've only had 280 or something like that.
No, my day's ruined and now I'm just going to eat all the Tim Tams instead of the apple.
So two to three different types of fruit, or 300 grams of fruit a day. Veggies, I usually like, I think we put like 375 or something like that, but I usually go like 400.
I say 300 to 400.
Yeah. Or for me, I know like, I think the industry standards are like 3 to 5 veggies per day.
Yeah.
I like to go on the upper end of that spectrum. Depending on the season, actually, like at the moment, summer here in Australia, I've got a lot more people pushing more fruit in. Like I have a lot of people going like,
because it's
in season. Yeah. So I have a lot more people putting like 4 or 5 different types of fruits in their diet, doing like fruit salads or smoothies and that sort of stuff. So they've skewed it more to the other side, and it's like a little like might be 2 or 3 types of veggies. It might be like your frozen mixed bag of broccoli, cauliflower, and carrots,
some lettuce and tomato in a sandwich. Or
exactly. So but generally I'll go like 5+ types of vegetables. And when you think about like those mixed salad, like mixed frozen veggie bags, you can hit 3 types just in one of those.
Some bags have 5. Like they've got capsicum, like beans, like
capsicum, beans, broccoli, cauliflower.
And there's like the white. What's the white?
I don't know. There's like
something else in there. I don't know what it is. I've never looked at it. It's like one of
those Asian ones.
Yeah, I've never looked at it properly.
Or I personally, Woolies have a really good range of like. There's a stir fry veggie bag that's like like it's fresh.
Yep.
And that's got like onions, capsicum, cabbage. I can't remember what else. There's there's bok choy, like there's 5 or 6 different types of veggies in that. And there's another super greens one that's got like zucchini, kale, white cabbage, there's broccoli that's like shredded broccoli and stuff like that in there. So Woolies is always my go-to for the mixed veggie bags because they have the fresh produce section has got some fucking sick.
I love the cabbage slaw kits in like a stir fry because there's like 3 different types. It's like cabbage, carrot, purple or white.
And there's one more thing in there as well.
Quite a few, and they're really good.
Yeah. So definitely go for your mixed bags when it comes to getting your nutrient diversity in from veggies. But those are my typical sort of numbers that I like to go for. And I've pushed people up to like 8 to 10 different types of veggies per day, and which is again like surprisingly easy when you use some of those bags. It's when you're buying like the single produce item that it feels like it's a lot. Like if you're buying a broccoli and a zucchini and a capsicum, and like you're just like, holy fuck, this is a
you're like what do I do with this? Talk to me, veggies. Tell me,
how do I cook you? Which is actually the last thing we should probably note on here is like people's cooking skills and stuff like that when you're creating these meal plans needs to be considered.
Actually, can I quickly talk about some more markers that I also look at, and then we can talk about that, because another one is calcium. I feel like, especially for females, like bone health. I'm so, like, we want to make sure we're getting all that in now, because when we're older and frail, like there's no turning back time.
And a lot of people are actually steering away from like dairy products and stuff too. So you'll often find that that's starting to dwindle down in their diet.
So like encouraging people like yogurt, cottage cheese. Otherwise you can buy like there's like John West tuna that's high with the calcium and things like that. So I'm always kind of, when I explain the meal plan, I also talk about how calcium's present in some of these things and kind of reiterate that. And then just like grains, because I feel like a lot of people
grains and seeds.
Grains and seeds and things like that, because I feel like people often...
Do you have your go-to seeds? Because I actually don't use a lot of seeds in my diets. Like I'll use like whole grains, but I don't use a lot of seeds, and it's something I myself as a coach recognize I need to utilize more of. So,
I'm really good with my grains.
Yep.
Seeds, like chia is like pretty much the
Yeah.
one. So I need to like expand my seeds as well.
I saw Josh has been eating his flax seeds
Oh.
in his diet. So that's from his coach James.
Yes.
But yeah, I definitely need to expand on my seed
that's-
vocabulary to utilize more of those in my clients' diets, and just subtly drop them in like a smoothie or breakfast things and
smoothie
stuff
bowl.
like that.
Yeah. And then we were talking about when someone maybe meal plans are good to kind of show people how to cook, introduce them to new meals. So when I have clients come on board, I ask them like, do you like cooking? Do you like spending time in the kitchen?
Yeah.
And majority of my clients don't.
I don't.
And I can resonate with that because I fucking hate cooking.
Yeah.
And if people are like, what?
Someone turned to me and they're like, you're not a very good nutritionist if you don't know how to cook.
And
I'm like,
I fucking disagree with that, because a nutrition coach isn't a chef or here to teach you how to cook.
Yeah.
We're here to kind of help with behaviors, habits, like knowledge around the foods. And like, we can recommend things, but
I like to think that the foods that I give people are pretty damn tasty still.
Yeah,
but they're simple. They're not like MasterChef.
No, it's not like we're writing meal plans with like basic tuna.
People just don't have as much
rice.
time to fucking cook. 45 minutes in the kitchen each night.
And if people love cooking, we do have all those recipes, guides that we can refer them to. But like usually my clients don't like cooking, and for me, I'm like, great, because I've got a
what
plethora
appliances
of things.
do you have so we can fast track your cooking?
I'm like, do you have a slow cooker? Do you have a rice cooker? Like,
air fryers.
Do you have a wok? Like some clients are like, oh, I can't really fit this pan on my stove, which is why. And I'm like, oh, this is good to know. So we'll look at all these other things. So usually, if someone comes on board with that, we'll do really simple meals to start off with and help them build up their like meal repertoire. Some weeks with some clients in particular, like we'll introduce a new recipe a week. So we'll focus on maybe lunches or dinners for that week and try a new recipe.
But something that's a similar caloric value so you can
swap it in and out. And when I build out meal plans, I try to keep all of those main meals a similar kind of calorie allotment. So it's easier for people to like sub stuff in and out.
Just on that note of swapping things around as well, obviously the more skilled you become as you go through this whole nutrition process, one of the things that I encourage a lot of my guys is I'll create a meal, like a dinner meal, and I'll give them different ways that they can cook that meal. So it's just, consider this a list of ingredients. The way in which you prep and cook these things is totally up to you. You can swap this piece of steak out for 5-star mince because calorically they're one for one.
Similar,
You have, instead of having a jacket potato with your steak, you can have mashed potato, you can have mash and mince and make this a shepherd's pie. You could utilize this same list of ingredients and make it largely different taste styles based on how you're cooking it.
Or if I have someone wanting a stir fry, or like, I'll be like, you can swap the rice out for like X amount of this type of noodle, or change this sauce to this sauce. Or if you're having a breakfast, like cooked eggs, like you could turn it into an omelet instead of having the fried eggs and like the spinach and the tomato on the side. Like,
so many different ways. We'll round this up here now and just put a call out there. If anyone out there disagrees with anything that we've said here,
come at me.
Why, like, so just some different opinions on why you don't like meal plans, why what different methods or principles that you use. At the end of the day, they're all tools in the toolbox. They all have a place, like intuitive eating, macro tracking, meal plans, all these different sorts of things. So I'd be interested out there if you disagree with anything that we've said here, or you
had a bad experience in the past.
Absolutely, let us know. Send us, go to the NexusPerformance.com.au/podcast and submit a feedback form there. I'd be really interested to get some different people's opinions, or alternatively, just flick us a DM and yell at us in our inboxes, and gives us more topic, more juice. But I'll do a final call out on the 15th of January, 5:30 p.m. Brisbane time. We have a weight cutting masterclass, and that is completely free. So all you need to do is head to the link in our bio on our socials and stuff like that, or in the links below here, and you can register for that. And then we also have our powerlifting nutrition
Not
course.
nutrition course.
That is kicking off the 5th of February.
Yes.
And that is $350 for the entire 5 weeks, where we go through some of this sort of stuff, and we give you all the information that you need in an applicable sense, not just information for the sake of knowledge and information. It's stuff that is easily digestible and applicable, which is really important to me.
And there's a lot of we have weekly live lectures, a lot of discussion and case studies as well throughout it, which are all extremely fun.
Cool. All right. Thanks very much, guys. And we'll see you on the next one.
Bye.
Adios. Thank you for listening to the Nexus Unloaded podcast. Be sure to jump on our website to find details on everything mentioned in the podcast today, plus information on our coaching, mentoring, and gyms based in the Gold Coast and Townsville. Make sure you follow us on our Instagram for any updates on what we are currently doing, and we'll see you all in the next episode.